The dust-laden stagecoach rattled to a stop outside Whitfield's general store, the last rays of sunset casting long shadows across Salida, Colorado. Clara Zimmerman clutched her threadbare carpet bag with trembling fingers, her heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer against an anvil. This wasn't how her journey west was supposed to end, abandoned in a strange town, nearly penniless, with nowhere to go, and no one expecting her arrival. 3 weeks ago, Clara had been full of hope when she boarded a train in Philadelphia, responding to a marriage advertisement from a cattle rancher named Theodore Holloway. His letters had painted such a promising picture: a successful ranch, a comfortable home, and a respectable man seeking a wife. All lies, as it turned out. "End of the line for you, miss," the stagecoach driver called down, his weathered face showing a hint of sympathy as he handed down her single trunk. "This here's Salida." Clara stepped down onto the hard, packed dirt, her legs stiff from the long journey. At 22, she had risked everything on this new beginning, sold her few possessions, left behind her job as a seamstress, and bid farewell to the orphanage that had been her only home since age 12. Now, her dreams lay shattered at her feet like broken glass. "Excuse me," she called to the driver as he prepared to depart. "I was meant to be met by Mr. Theodore Holloway. Do you know of him?" The driver exchanged a look with a townswoman who had stopped to observe the coach's arrival. The woman's face twisted into something between pity and disgust. "Holloway," the woman interjected. "That snake's been advertising for brides in 3 different states, brings 'em here, takes whatever money they bring, then sends 'em packing when they ain't what he expected. You're the 3rd one this month, poor dear." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. But his letters, he seemed so genuine. "Genuine as a $3 bill," the driver spat. "Sorry, miss, town's got no sheriff right now. Holloway knows it too." Clara swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "What am I to do? I've spent nearly everything getting here." The woman shook her head. "Hotel's $5 a night. If you've got that, you might find work at the laundry. If not—" She hesitated. "Well, there's always the Gilded Lily down the street for pretty girls in trouble." Clara clutched her bag tighter, the implication hanging heavy in the air. "I'll manage, thank you," she said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. As twilight deepened into night, Clara found herself walking the dusty Main Street, the weight of her trunk growing heavier with each step. The few dollars sewn into the hem of her dress wouldn't last long. The Gilded Lily's gas lamps glowed at the end of the street, promising immediate money but at a cost she wasn't willing to pay. "You look lost, miss." The voice startled her. A tall man in a shabby coat stood beside the mercantile, smoking a thin cigar. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine, thank you," Clara replied, quickening her pace. "Name's Jeremiah Quinn," he continued, falling into step beside her. "I help ladies like yourself find opportunities." "I'm not interested in your opportunities, Mr. Quinn." His hand closed around her arm. "Now don't be hasty. I heard you talking by the coach. Holloway left you high and dry, didn't he? I can help. Got a wagon heading east tomorrow. Men pay good money for company on the journey." Clara tried to pull away. "Release me at once." "Now, see here, the lady asked you to let her go, Quinn." A new voice cut through the darkness, deep, steady, and carrying a quiet authority. Clara turned to see a man standing in the shadows of the livery stable. He stepped forward, his face illuminated by the glow of a nearby lantern. He wasn't a large man, but something in his stance suggested he wasn't one to be trifled with. His dark hair fell in waves to his shoulders, and a neatly trimmed beard framed a face weathered by sun and wind. What struck Clara most were his eyes, piercing blue, assessing the situation with calm calculation. Quinn's grip loosened. "This ain't your concern, Farrell." Made it my concern when you started manhandling a lady in the street." The man's hand rested casually on the revolver at his hip. "Let her go." Quinn released Clara's arm, backing away with a scowl. "Fine. Take the soiled dove if you want her. More trouble than she's worth anyway." He spat on the ground and stalked away toward the saloon. Clara rubbed her arm where Quinn's fingers had dug in. "Thank you, sir, but I'm not what he implied." The stranger's expression softened slightly. "Never thought you were, madam. Vaughn Farrell." He introduced himself with a slight nod. "Ranch is a few miles outside town, Clara Zimmerman." She hesitated, uncertain what to say next. This man had helped her, but experience had taught her to be wary of strangers offering assistance, especially men. Vaughn seemed to read her thoughts. "You're one of Holloway's mail-order brides, I reckon. Third one this month." Clara's cheeks burned with humiliation. News travels fast. "Small town," he replied simply. "What's your plan now?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. I don't know, find work, I suppose, save for a ticket back east." Vaughn studied her for a moment, then glanced at the heavy trunk. "You got a place to stay tonight?" "I'll manage," she repeated, the phrase beginning to sound hollow even to her own ears. "Town's not safe after dark for a woman alone, especially not with Quinn looking for you." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I've got a wagon out back. Was heading home after picking up supplies. I can take you to my sister's boarding house on the edge of town. Decent place, fair prices." Clara hesitated, weighing her options. The streets were growing darker, and Quinn's threat lingered in her mind. "I can pay for one night," she said finally. "After that, I'll need to find work." Vaughn nodded once. "This way." The wagon ride to the boarding house was mostly silent. Clara stole glances at her rescuer, noting the straight line of his profile against the starlit sky. He handled the reins with easy confidence, guiding the horses through the darkened streets. "Thank you, Mr. Farrell," she said as they approached a well-kept two-story house set back from the road. "I'm in your debt." "No debt," he replied. "Just doing what anyone ought to." Clara thought of Quinn and Holloway. "Not everyone shares your sense of duty." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "True enough." The boarding house proved to be clean and modestly priced, run by Vaughn's sister, Martha, a practical woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She showed Clara to a small but comfortable room and promised hot water for washing in the morning. "My brother told me your situation," Martha said, her voice gentle but direct. "I need help around here if you're looking for work. Can't pay much, but includes room and board." Clara felt tears threatening. "That would be very welcome, thank you." Later, as she lay in the narrow bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, Clara replayed the day's events. Theodore Holloway's betrayal still stung, but the unexpected kindness of Vaughn Farrell and his sister had given her the first flicker of hope since stepping off that stagecoach. Tomorrow, she would begin again. It wasn't the life she had imagined when she answered that advertisement, but perhaps it could still be a good one. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee and baking bread. Clara dressed quickly in her second-best dress, a simple blue cotton that had seen better days but was clean and presentable. She pinned her light brown hair into a neat bun and went downstairs to find Martha already busy in the kitchen. "Good morning," Clara offered. "May I help?" Martha looked up from the dough she was kneading. "You can set the table. We've got 5 boarders besides you, all men, railroad workers mostly. They'll be down any minute." Clara quickly learned the rhythm of the boarding house. Breakfast at 6. Dinner at noon for those who came home to eat it, and supper at 6 in the evening. Between meals, there was cleaning, laundry, mending, and preparation for the next meal. It was hard work, but no harder than what she'd known at the orphanage or as a seamstress. 3 days passed in this manner. Clara saw nothing of Vaughn during this time and wondered if he had forgotten about her. Not that she had any claim on his attention, he had done more than most would by bringing her to Martha's. On the 4th day, as Clara was hanging sheets to dry in the yard behind the boarding house, she heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Looking up, she saw Vaughn dismounting from a chestnut mare. "Miss Zimmerman," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Martha around?" "In the kitchen, Mr. Farrell." Clara tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, suddenly aware of her work-worn hands and simple dress. Vaughn nodded and started toward the house, then paused. "You settling in all right?" "Yes, thank you. Your sister has been very kind." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Good. That's good." Later, when Martha came out to help with the laundry, Clara couldn't help asking about her brother's visit. "He comes by once a week or so," Martha explained. "Brings eggs and milk from the ranch when he can spare them." "Man acts like I can't buy my own supplies." There was affection in her mock complaint. "He seems reserved," Clara ventured. Martha gave her a shrewd look. "Vaughn's got his reasons for keeping to himself. War changed him, changed a lot of men. He fought in the war, Union cavalry. Doesn't talk about it much." Martha pinned a sheet to the line with more force than necessary. "Lost our younger brother at Gettysburg. Vaughn was there too, couldn't save him." Clara's heart ached at the thought. "I'm sorry. It was 10 years ago now." "Vaughn came west afterward, started the ranch. Does all right for himself, but keeps to himself too." Martha sighed. "Only reason he comes to town as often as he does is he's helping build the new schoolhouse. Good with his hands, my brother." A week turned into 2, and Clara found herself watching for Vaughn's visits. He never stayed long, usually just dropping off supplies and exchanging a few words with Martha. Occasionally, he would tip his hat to Clara and ask how she was faring, but never lingered for conversation. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Martha sent Clara to the mercantile for supplies. The town was bustling with weekend activity, ranch hands spending their wages, families doing their shopping, and travelers passing through on their way elsewhere. As Clara exited the store, her arms laden with packages, she nearly collided with Theodore Holloway. She recognized him immediately from the small photograph he had sent with his letters, handsome in a conventional way, with carefully pomaded hair and a waxed mustache. "Excuse me, madam," he said automatically, then his eyes widened in recognition. "Well, if it isn't Miss Zimmerman, I see you found your way after all." Clara felt her chest tighten with anger. "Mr. Holloway, how convenient to run into you now after you failed to meet me as promised." Holloway's smile turned cold. "Now, my dear, I never promised anything. I merely suggested we might suit. Upon your arrival, I determined we would not. Without even meeting me, after I traveled 2,000 miles, he shrugged, unconcerned. The photograph you sent was flattering. Reality proved disappointing." His gaze swept over her dismissively. "No man wants damaged goods, my dear." Clara felt as if she'd been slapped. Her status as an orphan mentioned in her letters was being thrown in her face like a moral failing. "You're a despicable man," she said, her voice low but steady. "How many other women have you lured here with false promises? I make no apologies for seeking a suitable wife through whatever means necessary." His tone was maddeningly reasonable. "If women choose to travel west on speculation, that's hardly my concern." "You stole their futures," Clara said, "and their savings. Such dramatics." He glanced around, noting several townspeople watching their exchange. "I suggest you move along, Miss Zimmerman. I understand Quinn is still looking to add you to his collection for the journey east." Before Clara could respond, a shadow fell across them. Vaughn stood there, his expression unreadable as he looked between them. "Problem here," he asked quietly. Holloway's smug expression faltered slightly. No problem, Farrell, just greeting an old acquaintance. Didn't look like a friendly greeting to me. Vaughn's tone was mild, but Clara sensed the steel beneath it. Simply a misunderstanding, Holloway said smoothly. Miss Zimmerman and I had a business arrangement that didn't work out. That's so, Vaughn turned to Clara. That how you see it, Miss Zimmerman? Clara straightened her shoulders. Mr. Holloway advertised for a wife, brought me here under false pretenses, and abandoned me without so much as a meeting. Holloway's face darkened. Now see here, seems pretty clear, Vaughn interrupted. You owe the lady her travel expenses at minimum. A small crowd had gathered now, watching the confrontation with interest. Holloway's gaze darted around, calculating his position. This is absurd. I owe her nothing. There was no contract. There were letters, Clara said. Promises. I have them still. Vaughn crossed his arms. Sounds like fraud to me. Town's getting a new sheriff next week. First thing he might want to look into is a man bringing women out here under false pretenses. Might interest the territorial judge, too. Holloway's face flushed with anger. You're threatening me over some fortune-hunting female. Vaughn didn't blink. I'm suggesting you do the honorable thing, unless you'd prefer to discuss honor more privately. The implied challenge hung in the air. Holloway's hand twitched toward his waistcoat, where Clara suspected he carried a derringer or small pistol. But Vaughn's reputation, whatever it was, seemed to give him pause. Fine, Holloway snarled, reaching for his wallet. He counted out several bills and thrust them at Clara. Take it, and consider our business concluded, and tell your watchdog here that threats have consequences. Clara accepted the money with steady hands. Thank you for returning what was rightfully mine, Mr. Holloway. Holloway stalked away, the crowd parting to let him through. Whispers followed in his wake, and Clara realized that for perhaps the first time, the town was seeing Holloway for what he truly was. Vaughn helped her gather the packages she had set down during the confrontation. You all right? Yes, thank you. Again. Clara tucked the money carefully into her reticule. You seem to make a habit of rescuing me. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Maybe you make a habit of needing rescue. The unexpected touch of humor surprised a laugh out of her. Perhaps I do. Though I hope not to make it a permanent condition. They walked side by side back toward the boarding house, the tension of the confrontation gradually easing. What will you do now? Vaughn asked. With the money, I mean. Clara considered the question. I'm not sure. It's enough for a ticket back east with some left over. She hesitated. But there's nothing for me there, really. No family, few friends. You could stay, he suggested, his tone carefully neutral. Martha says you're a good worker. Town's growing, might be opportunities. Clara glanced at him, trying to read his expression. I've been thinking about that. I noticed the dressmaker's shop is for sale. Mrs. Peterson is moving to Denver to live with her daughter. Vaughn nodded. You so? It was my trade in Philadelphia. I'm quite good, actually. She allowed a note of pride to enter her voice. I was thinking, with Holloway's money and what I've saved working for Martha, I might have enough to make Mrs. Peterson an offer. They had reached the boarding house, and Vaughn set her packages on the porch steps. Sounds like you found your own rescue this time. Clara smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sun. Perhaps I have. In the weeks that followed, Clara threw herself into establishing her new business. Mrs. Peterson accepted her offer for the shop, which included a small apartment above it. The older woman even agreed to stay on for 2 weeks to introduce Clara to her regular customers before departing for Denver. The work was familiar and satisfying. Clara had always had a gift for understanding what would flatter a woman's figure, and her stitches were neat and precise. Word spread quickly that the new dressmaker had a fresh eye for fashion, while maintaining practical sensibilities appropriate for frontier life. Vaughn stopped by the shop one afternoon in late August, looking somewhat uncomfortable as he removed his hat upon entering. "Mr. Farrell," Clara greeted him, setting aside the bodice she was altering. "This is a surprise." He cleared his throat. "Martha mentioned you'd open shop here. Thought I'd see how you're getting on." "Very well, thank you." She gestured around the tidy shop with its bolts of fabric and partially completed garments. "Business has been steady," he nodded, turning his hat in his hands. "Good, that's good." An awkward silence fell between them. Clara found herself wanting to prolong the conversation but unsure how. "Was there something specific you needed?" she asked finally. "I'm afraid I don't do much men's clothing, but I could perhaps harvest dance," he interrupted, then seemed to gather himself. "Town's having a harvest dance next Saturday. Thought you might not have heard, being new and busy with the shop." Clara felt a flutter of anticipation. "I had heard something about it from my customers." Vaughn shifted his weight. "Thought you might want to go. Could introduce you to some folks you haven't met yet." It took Clara a moment to realize he was inviting her. "Are you asking to escort me, Mr. Farrell?" A faint flush colored his tanned cheeks. "If that would be agreeable." Clara couldn't help smiling. "It would be very agreeable, thank you." He nodded once, decisively, as if completing a business transaction. "I'll call for you at 6 then." After he left, Clara found herself humming as she returned to her sewing. The prospect of an evening of music and dancing and Vaughn's company brightened her outlook considerably. The night of the harvest dance arrived clear and cool, with the first hint of autumn crispness in the air. Clara had made herself a new dress for the occasion, nothing extravagant, but a becoming gown of deep green cotton with black piping that emphasized her slender waist. She wore her hair half up, with soft curls framing her face. Vaughn arrived precisely at 6, dressed in a clean shirt and vest, his usually wild hair tamed somewhat for the occasion. He stopped short when she opened the door, staring at her for a long moment before remembering his manners. "You look very nice, Miss Zimmerman," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you. So do you, Mr. Farrell." The dance was held in the newly completed schoolhouse, its plain wooden walls decorated with autumn leaves and paper lanterns. A three-piece band played lively tunes, and the floor was already crowded with dancers when they arrived. Clara knew many of the townspeople now, at least by sight, but Vaughn made good on his promise to introduce her more formally. She met the new sheriff, a former Texas Ranger named Blackburn, the banker, Mr. Walsh and his formidable wife, and numerous ranchers and merchants from the surrounding area. "Everyone seems very welcoming," Clara commented as they took a break from the dancing to enjoy some punch. "Folks here are good people mostly," Vaughn replied. "Had their share of hardships, appreciate someone who works hard and minds their business." "Is that what you appreciate, Mr. Farrell?" she asked, feeling uncharacteristically bold. He looked at her then, really looked at her in a way that made her breath catch. Among other things, the music started again, a slower waltz this time. Vaughn set down his cup. "May I have this dance, Miss Zimmerman?" Clara placed her hand in his. "You may, Mr. Farrell. And I think, after all this time, you might call me Clara." His hand was warm against the small of her back as he led her onto the floor. "Then I'm Vaughn to you." Dancing with him felt natural, as if they had been partners for years rather than mere acquaintances. He moved with the same quiet confidence he showed in everything, guiding her through the steps with a gentle but firm hand. "You're a fine dancer," she observed, surprised. A small smile touched his lips. "My mother insisted all her sons learn. Said no Farrell boy would embarrass her at social gatherings. She sounds formidable." She was. his expression softened with memory. Died when I was 15. Fever took her in 3 days. I'm sorry, I never knew my mother. She died when I was born. His hand tightened slightly on hers, a gesture of understanding. Martha mentioned you grew up in an orphanage. Clara tensed slightly, remembering Holloway's cruel dismissal. Yes, does that trouble you? Vaughn's blue eyes met hers directly. Why would it? Some consider it a mark against a person's character, or worry about bad blood. He shook his head, guiding her through a turn. Seems to me it's what a person does with their life that matters, not how it started. Clara felt something tight within her chest loosen at his words. That's a refreshing perspective, Vaughn. As they continued to dance, Clara became aware of whispers and glances in their direction. She caught sight of Holloway on the far side of the room, his expression sour as he watched them. We're causing a stir, she murmured. Vaughn followed her gaze. Holloway's been spreading talk, says you trapped him, tried to force him into marriage. Clara stiffened. That's absurd. He invited me here. I know, so does anyone with sense. His hand on her back was reassuring. But folks love gossip. And what about you? She asked. Are there whispers about why Vaughn Farrell is dancing with the spurned mail-order bride? A muscle in his jaw tightened. Let them talk. I dance with who I please. The directness of his response warmed her. Whatever his reasons for escorting her tonight, Vaughn wasn't a man to be swayed by public opinion. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself enjoying Vaughn's company more and more. Beneath his reserved exterior was a thoughtful mind and an unexpected streak of dry humor that emerged when he was comfortable. They danced several more times and shared a plate of food from the communal table. When the dance ended around midnight, Vaughn walked her back to her apartment above the shop. The night had grown chilly, and he had placed his coat around her shoulders despite her protests that she wasn't cold. Thank you for a lovely evening, Clara said as they reached her door. I haven't enjoyed myself so much in a very long time. Vaughn nodded, his expression difficult to read in the dim light. It was my pleasure. A moment of awkward silence stretched between them. Clara found herself hoping he might kiss her, then immediately felt foolish for the thought. One evening of dancing hardly constituted courtship, and Vaughn had given no indication that his interest was romantic. Well, good night then, she said finally, removing his coat and handing it back to him. Clara, he began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. I'd like to call on you again if that would be welcome, her heart quickened. It would be very welcome. He nodded once, that decisive gesture she was coming to recognize. Sunday, could take a ride out to see the aspens turning color if you'd like. I would like that very much. This time, he did kiss her, just a brief, gentle press of his lips against her cheek, but it sent warmth spreading through her nonetheless. Good night, Clara. Good night, Vaughn. Inside her apartment, Clara leaned against the closed door, touching her fingers to the spot where his lips had been. For the first time since arriving in Salida, she felt truly hopeful about her future here. The autumn days grew shorter, and Clara's relationship with Vaughn deepened with the changing season. Their Sunday rides became a regular occurrence, sometimes with a picnic packed by Martha, sometimes just the two of them exploring the beautiful country around Salida. Vaughn gradually opened up about his life. He told her about his childhood in Kentucky, his time in the Union cavalry, and the loss of his younger brother that had driven him west after the war. He spoke of building his ranch from nothing, the hard years of struggle, and his current modest success. In turn, Clara shared her own story, her childhood in the orphanage, her apprenticeship to a seamstress at 14, her dreams of a family of her own. She even told him about the advertisement that had brought her to Colorado, showing him Holloway's letters with their false promises. I was naive, she admitted as they sat by a stream one crisp October afternoon. I wanted so badly to believe someone could want me, sight unseen. Vaughn's hand covered hers, warm and calloused. Nothing naive about hoping for love. She looked up at him, struck by the tenderness in his voice. Is that what you hope for, Vaughn? His blue eyes held hers steadily. Stopped hoping for a lot of things after the war. Started hoping again the night I found you standing on the street with your trunk. Clara's breath caught. It was the closest he had come to declaring his feelings. Vaughn, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. 3 riders came into view, Jeremiah Quinn and 2 rough-looking men Clara didn't recognize. Vaughn stood, positioning himself slightly in front of Clara. His hand didn't move toward his gun, but she could sense his alertness. Farrell, Quinn greeted him with a nod that didn't reach his cold eyes. Quite a ways from town for a Sunday stroll. Quinn, Vaughn acknowledged. Something I can help you with. Quinn's gaze slid to Clara, and the hairs on her neck rose at his expression. Just passing through. Heading to Denver with some merchandise. He gestured to several pack horses trailing behind his companions. Thought I recognized the lady, still got that shop in town. She does, Vaughn answered before Clara could speak. Doing well for herself. Quinn's smile was unpleasant. Is she now? Interesting how things work out. He turned his attention back to Vaughn. Heard Holloway's still sore about you making him pay her off. Man's got a long memory for slights. That's so. Vaughn's tone was neutral, but Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. Just thought you should know. Man like that with money and connections can make trouble, Quinn shrugged. Anyways, we'll be moving along. Nice seeing you again, Miss Zimmerman. If dressmaking doesn't work out, my offer still stands. The 3 men rode on, leaving an uneasy silence in their wake. Clara shivered despite the warm sunshine. I don't like the way he looked at you, Vaughn said quietly. What did he mean about his offer still standing? Vaughn's expression darkened. Quinn runs women, sells them to mining camps and remote settlements where there aren't many females. Some go willingly, desperate for any way out of worse situations. Others. He trailed off, the implication clear. And Holloway, do you think he'd really cause trouble? Maybe. Man's got pride and money to burn. Vaughn helped her to her feet. Let's head back to town. The encounter cast a shadow over what had been a perfect day. As they rode back to Salida, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Quinn's appearance hadn't been coincidental. Her unease proved justified the following week when she arrived at her shop to find the front window smashed and her fabric bolts slashed and strewn about. A note had been pinned to her cutting table with a hunting knife. Go back east where you belong. Sheriff Blackburn investigated but found little evidence to point to a specific culprit. Could be Holloway's doing, he admitted to Clara and Vaughn, but could just as easily be local troublemakers. You're taking business from Widow Johnson's sewing circle, and some folks don't like newcomers prospering. Clara refused to be intimidated. She cleaned up the mess, replaced the window, and reopened 2 days later. Her regular customers rallied around her, bringing additional work and spreading the word about her skills. Vaughn began riding into town more frequently, often staying until closing time to walk her to her apartment. Sometimes he would bring small gifts, a jar of honey from his hives, a book he thought she might enjoy. Wildflowers gathered on the ride-in. One evening in early November, as they walked through the quiet streets after Clara had closed the shop, Vaughn seemed preoccupied. Something on your mind? She asked gently. He hesitated, then led her to a bench outside the church. Need to talk to you about something. Clara's stomach tightened with apprehension. His serious tone suggested bad news. What is it? Been thinking about what Quinn said, about Holloway making trouble. He took her hand, his expression grave. 2 days ago, someone cut my fence lines and scattered my cattle, lost most of a day rounding them up. You think Holloway was behind it? Vaughn nodded slowly. Can't prove it, but timing's suspicious. And one of my hands saw riders that matched the description of men Holloway's been drinking with lately. Oh, Vaughn, I'm so sorry. This is all because of me. He squeezed her hand. No, it's because Holloway's a vindictive snake who can't stand being shown up. And because Quinn's looking for any excuse to cause problems. What can we do? Vaughn took a deep breath. Been thinking on that too. Got 2 proposals. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. First is deed to a small parcel of my land, about 40 acres with a good spring. It's yours if you want it. You could build a place there, be safe from town trouble, close enough to keep your shop if you want, but with somewhere secure to retreat to. Clara stared at the deed, stunned by his generosity. Vaughn, I can't accept this. It's too much. Not asking you to accept it yet, just consider it. He returned the deed to his pocket and reached for her other hand. Second proposal is, well, it's me, asking you to marry me. Clara's breath caught. What? His blue eyes were earnest as they met hers. I love you, Clara. Think I started falling for you that first night, seeing your courage even when everything had gone wrong. You've brought something into my life I never expected to find again, hope, joy. He paused. I know it hasn't been long and you came here expecting to marry someone else. If you need time, yes, Clara interrupted. Vaughn blinked. Yes, you need time. Yes, I'll marry you. She squeezed his hands, her heart feeling as if it might burst with happiness. I love you too, Vaughn. I've known it for weeks. The smile that broke across his face transformed him, erasing the lines of worry and revealing a younger, less burdened man beneath. He pulled her close and kissed her properly, for the first time, a tender, searching kiss that left her breathless. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers. You're sure? Life on a ranch isn't easy, Clara smiled. I didn't come west expecting easy. I came looking for a home and someone to build a life with. I've found both in you. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Salida. Most reactions were positive. Martha was openly delighted, and many of Clara's customers offered congratulations. But Holloway's faction in town made their displeasure known through cold shoulders and veiled comments. Clara and Vaughn decided on a December wedding before the worst of winter set in. In the meantime, Clara began dividing her time between her shop and learning about ranch life from Vaughn. She discovered she had a knack for gardening and poultry keeping, and even learned to ride properly under Vaughn's patient instruction. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. Clara arrived at her shop one morning to find it engulfed in flames. The volunteer fire brigade was already working to contain the blaze, but it was clear that the shop and her apartment above it were beyond saving. Sheriff Blackburn found her standing across the street, watching in stunned silence as her business and most of her possessions burned. I'm sorry, Miss Zimmerman, he said, genuine regret in his gruff voice. By the time anyone noticed, it was too far gone. Was anyone hurt? She managed to ask. No, thank the Lord. Building was empty. He hesitated. Found this nailed to the tree out back. He handed her a piece of paper. The note was brief. Mail order brides not welcome in Salida. Clara crumpled the paper in her fist, anger overriding her shock. This was deliberate. Appears so, Blackburn agreed. Found evidence someone poured coal oil around the foundation. Holloway, the sheriff sighed. Can't prove it. Man was playing cards at the saloon until midnight with plenty of witnesses. But doesn't mean he couldn't have paid someone. Vaughn arrived a short time later, having been fetched by one of the townsfolk. His face was grim as he surveyed the still smoldering ruins. You're not hurt? He asked Clara, his eyes scanning her for any sign of injury. No, I wasn't here when it started. She leaned into him as his arm went around her shoulders. Everything's gone, Vaughn. All my fabric, my machines, my patterns. Things can be replaced, he said firmly. You can't. Clara nodded, clinging to his solid presence. What do we do now? Now you come home with me, he said. Should have insisted on it after the first incident. But we're not married yet. Martha can come too, act as chaperone if you're worried about propriety. But I'm not leaving you in town where Holloway or Quinn can get to you. Clara looked up at the determination in his face. All right. That evening, Clara found herself at Vaughn's ranch, a modest but well-built house set among cottonwood trees. Martha had indeed accompanied them, bringing what few possessions Clara had stored at the boarding house. It's lovely, Clara said as Vaughn showed her around the main room with its stone fireplace and sturdy furniture. It's not fancy, he replied, but it's solid. Built it myself, mostly. It feels like a home. She touched a quilt draped over a rocking chair. Did Martha make this? My mother did. One of the few things I brought from Kentucky. Clara was touched that he'd shared this piece of his past with her. Thank you for bringing me here. Later, after Martha had retired to the guest room, Vaughn and Clara sat by the fire discussing their next steps. Sheriff promised to keep investigating the fire, Vaughn said, but without witnesses. Clara nodded, resigned. I know. And even if they found proof it was Holloway, his money would probably protect him. We could postpone the wedding, Vaughn suggested. Give you time to rebuild the shop if that's what you want. Clara considered this. Is that what you want, to wait? Vaughn took her hand, his expression serious. What I want is you safe and happy. If that means waiting, then we wait. If it means moving on from Salida, we can do that too. Leave Salida, but your ranch. Land is land, can sell it, buy elsewhere, he shrugged. Montana's opening up. Or we could go to California. Clara was stunned by his willingness to uproot his life for her. You do that, leave everything you've built here. For you, yes. His blue eyes held her steadily. But before you decide anything, there's something you should know. He rose and crossed to a desk in the corner, returning with a letter. This came yesterday, from a lawyer in Denver. Clara took the letter with trepidation. What is it? Read it. The letter was addressed to Mr. Vaughn Farrell and concerned the estate of one James Holloway, recently deceased. Clara looked up in confusion. James Holloway, Theodore's uncle, died last month in Denver. Apparently, he was my mother's cousin, though I never knew him. Vaughn's expression was grim. According to that letter, he left me his share of the Holloway mining interests. It's substantial. Clara scanned the details in the letter, her eyes widening. This says the inheritance is worth over $50,000. Vaughn nodded. Theodore was expecting to receive it all. Now he gets half and I get half. That explains his increased hostility, Clara murmured. But why would James Holloway leave you anything if you never met him? Letter mentions my service in the Union Army. Seems James was a staunch Union man too, while Theodore's father sided with the Confederacy. Family split over it. Vaughn ran a hand through his hair. Timing's suspicious, isn't it? Theodore starts causing serious trouble right when he learns half his expected inheritance is going to me. What are you going to do with it? The inheritance? That depends on you. He took her hands in his. If you want to rebuild your shop, we can do that bigger and better. If you want to leave Salida, we have the means to start fresh anywhere you choose. He paused. Or we can stay right here and use the money to expand the ranch, maybe hire more hands so I can spend more time with my wife. Clara felt tears prick her eyes at the tenderness in his voice. Your wife. If you'll still have me, he said softly. Fire doesn't change how I feel about you, Clara. She leaned forward and kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. Of course I'll still have you, and I don't want to leave Salida. This is your home. You've built something real here. Our home, he corrected gently, if that's what you want. It is, she assured him. As for the shop, I'm not sure. Part of me wants to rebuild to show Holloway he can't drive me out, but another part. What? She hesitated. I've enjoyed learning about the ranch, being here with you. Maybe instead of reopening the shop in town, I could set up a smaller workroom here. Take special commissions but focus more on our life together. Vaughn's smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. I'd like that. The next morning, Clara woke to the sound of horses in the yard. Vaughn was already up, his expression tight as he looked out the window. Riders coming. 4 of them. He reached for his gun belt. Stay inside with Martha. Clara's heart raced. Who is it? Before he could answer, a voice called from outside. Farrell, come out and face me. Vaughn's jaw clenched. Holloway. Vaughn, don't stay inside, he repeated, his tone brooking no argument. He checked his revolver, then stepped onto the porch, leaving the door open just enough that Clara could see and hear. Theodore Holloway sat on a prancing stallion in the center of the yard, flanked by 3 rough-looking men, including Jeremiah Quinn. All were armed. What do you want, Holloway? Vaughn asked, his voice calm despite the tension Clara could see in his stance. I want what's mine, Holloway snapped. My uncle's money, all of it. Court seems to think half of it's mine, Vaughn replied evenly. Take it up with the judge if you disagree. Holloway's handsome face was distorted with rage. You think you're clever, don't you? Stealing my bride, then stealing my inheritance. Didn't steal anything. Clara chose to stay in Salida after you abandoned her. As for the inheritance, that was your uncle's decision, not mine. Don't you dare speak her name. Holloway's hand moved toward his gun. I'll see you both run out of Colorado before I let you take what's mine. Clara couldn't stand by any longer. Despite Vaughn's warning, she stepped onto the porch beside him. Mr. Holloway, this has gone far enough. You've already destroyed my business. What more do you want? Holloway's cold eyes fixed on her. I want you gone. Back east where you belong. You've brought nothing but trouble since you arrived. The only trouble came from you, Vaughn said, shifting slightly to keep Clara partially behind him. You lied to bring her here, then abandoned her when she arrived. Now you're burning buildings and threatening violence because you can't stand that she found happiness without you. And with my money, Holloway snarled. Your uncle's money, Vaughn corrected. And he had the right to leave it to whoever he chose. Quinn leaned forward in his saddle. This is getting us nowhere, Holloway. Let's just burn them out and be done with it. Clara gasped as she saw the coal oil cans strapped to the men's saddles. They had come prepared to destroy the ranch as they had her shop. That would be unwise, came a new voice from the edge of the yard. Sheriff Blackburn rode in, accompanied by 2 deputies and Martha. Clara realized the older woman must have slipped out the back to fetch help while they were distracted. Blackburn's expression was hard as he surveyed the scene. Threatening folks on their own property is a hanging offense in these parts, Quinn. So is arson. Holloway's face paled slightly. We were just talking, Sheriff. No threats were made. Not what I heard riding up, Blackburn replied. And those oil cans tell their own story. He dismounted, hand resting on his gun. I suggest you gentlemen turn around and ride back to town. Now. A tense standoff ensued, with Holloway and his men clearly calculating their odds against the sheriff's party. Finally, Holloway's shoulders slumped in defeat. This isn't over, Farrell, he spat. Yes, it is, Blackburn countered, because you're leaving Salida today. I've had reports from 3 different witnesses who saw one of your men near Miss Zimmerman's shop the night of the fire. That's enough to hold you for questioning while we investigate further. Holloway's eyes widened in panic. You can't, can and will. Unless you'd prefer to leave Colorado territory entirely, today. The sheriff's tone left no room for negotiation. Your choice. Silence stretched as Holloway weighed his options. Finally, he nodded stiffly. Fine. I'm done with this backwater town anyway. Denver has more opportunities for a man of my caliber. Good choice, Blackburn said. My deputies will escort you to the station to catch the noon train. Don't come back. As Holloway and his men were led away, Clara sagged against Vaughn in relief. Is it really over? Vaughn wrapped his arm around her waist. I think so. Holloway's too proud to risk his reputation on a public trial. Easier for him to start fresh in Denver with half his inheritance than fight for the other half and maybe end up with nothing. And Quinn? Quinn's been walking a fine line for years. Sheriff will keep a closer eye on him now. Vaughn kissed her forehead. We're safe, Clara. We can build our life without looking over our shoulders. 4 days later, Clara Zimmerman became Clara Farrell in a simple ceremony at the town church. Despite the short notice, it seemed half of Salida turned out for the wedding. Even Mrs. Peterson returned from Denver for the occasion, bringing fabric for a new wedding dress as her gift. Clara wore a gown of ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, her own design and stitching, completed in a flurry of activity after the fire. Vaughn, standing tall and handsome in a new black suit, looked at her as if she were the most precious thing he had ever seen. I, Vaughn, take thee, Clara, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he said, his deep voice steady as he repeated the minister's words. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. When Clara's turn came, her voice wavered with emotion. I, Clara, take thee, Vaughn, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. The minister smiled benevolently. By the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Vaughn lifted her veil with gentle hands and kissed her tenderly as the congregation erupted in applause. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, which had been transformed with lanterns, flowers, and tables laden with food contributed by friends and neighbors. Martha had outdone herself coordinating everything, and the result was more beautiful than Clara could have imagined. As dusk fell, Vaughn led her away from the festivities to a quiet spot beneath the cottonwoods. Happy, Mrs. Farrell, more than I ever thought possible, she replied, leaning into his embrace. It's strange to think that if Holloway had met me at the stagecoach that day, none of this would have happened. Vaughn's arms tightened around her. Maybe, maybe not. I like to think we would have found each other somehow. Clara smiled up at him. The mail-order bride sold back to the road, and the cowboy who opened his gate and said, "Come." Best decision I ever made, Vaughn murmured against her hair. Bringing you home. Home, Clara repeated, savoring the word. After years of searching, she had finally found it not in a place, but in the arms of the man who had seen her worth when others had not. 10 years passed, bringing changes to both Salida and the Farrell Ranch. The inheritance from James Holloway allowed Vaughn to expand his holdings and improve his breeding stock, establishing one of the most prosperous cattle operations in the county. Clara never reopened her dress shop in town, but she did set up a workroom at the ranch where she created special occasion garments for select clients. More of her time, however, was devoted to raising their growing family first twin boys, James and Matthew, born a year after their marriage, then a daughter, Elizabeth, 2 years later, and finally young Thomas, now 4 years old and the spitting image of his father. The ranch house had been expanded to accommodate the family, with a new wing of bedrooms and a larger kitchen where Clara and their cook, Mrs. Donnelly, prepared meals for the family and ranch hands. A garden flourished behind the house, providing fresh vegetables and flowers, and Clara's chickens produced eggs enough to supply both the ranch and neighbors. On a warm June morning, as Clara hung laundry on the line while Thomas helped by handing her clothespins, she heard the sound of approaching horses. Shading her eyes against the sun, she saw Vaughn riding in with the twins, returning from their morning inspection of the north pasture. At 11, James and Matthew were already accomplished riders, taking after their father in their love for the land and the animals that sustained them. They dismounted with easy grace, leading their ponies toward the barn. "Mama, Papa showed us the new calves," Matthew called, his face alight with excitement. "And we saw an eagle's nest," James added, not to be outdone. Clara smiled at their enthusiasm. "Wash up before lunch, both of you, and make sure Lizzie knows it's nearly time to eat." As the boys raced off toward the house, Vaughn dismounted and came to her side, stealing a kiss before Thomas could demand his attention. "Good morning, Mrs. Farrell," he said, his blue eyes still holding the same warmth that had captivated her a decade ago. "Good morning yourself, Mr. Farrell." She handed him a shirt to hang on the line. "Productive morning." "Very. The new bulls are doing their job. Kevs look strong." He lifted Thomas, who had been tugging at his pant leg. "And how's my little cowhand this morning?" "Helping Mama," Thomas declared proudly. Clara watched them together, her heart full. At 40, Vaughn had silver threading through his dark hair and new lines around his eyes, but he carried himself with the same quiet confidence she had first admired. The years had been kind to them both, each challenge faced together making their bond stronger. Later that afternoon, as the children played under Martha's watchful eye, the older woman had moved to the ranch after selling the boarding house 5 years prior. Clara and Vaughn rode out to their special place by the stream where he had first proposed. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years, Clara said as they sat side by side on a fallen log. Vaughn took her hand, his thumb tracing the calluses that spoke of her work as a mother and rancher's wife. "Best 10 years of my life. Mine too." She leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what became of Holloway? Heard he lost most of his inheritance speculating in Denver. Moved on to San Francisco after that." Vaughn shrugged. "Man never could be satisfied with what he had." "Unlike some I could name," Clara teased. Vaughn smiled, the expression transforming his face as it always did. "Got everything I need right here. Beautiful wife, healthy children, good land." Clara turned to face him fully. "I was thinking, perhaps we could add to that list." His eyebrows rose. "What did you have in mind?" "I've been feeling a bit under the weather lately, tired in the mornings." She placed his hand gently against her still flat stomach. "Dr. Morgan confirmed it yesterday. Come winter, there'll be another Farrell at the ranch." Joy bloomed across Vaughn's features. He gathered her close, mindful of her condition even in his excitement. "Another baby, Clara, that's wonderful news." She laughed at his enthusiasm. "I thought 4 might be enough, but it seems God has other plans." 5 is a fine number," he assured her, kissing her softly. "Or 6 or 7, if that's how it works out." "Let's start with 5, she suggested wryly. "We can revisit the topic later." As they rode back to the ranch in the golden light of late afternoon, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From orphan child to mail-order bride, from abandoned stranger to beloved wife and mother, each step, even the painful ones, had led her exactly where she was meant to be. The house came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, children's laughter drifting on the breeze. Home in every sense of the word. And beside her rode the man who had made it possible, the cowboy who had opened his gate and his heart and invited her in. "I love you, Vaughn Farrell," she said, the words as fresh and true as the first time she had spoken them. His smile was all the answer she needed, but he gave her the words anyway. "And I love you, Clara Farrell, today and all our tomorrows." Together they rode toward home and the future they continued to build day by day, side by side.